Welcome to Here and Abroad. I'm Frank Garza, and I'm joined as usual by Chuck Booth, a soccer writer for CBS Sports. On today's show, we're talking about which Americans impressed and disappointed over the weekend in Europe, including Yunus Musah surprisingly going the full 90 for AC Milan, while Tyler Adams started on the bench for Bournemouth. We'll head to MLS, where the Sullivan brothers made some noise, and get the latest on the summer transfer window, where Barcelona has reportedly joined the race for Folarin Balogun. We'll also look ahead to next weekend and an MLS matchup featuring some of the USMNT's top young talent. But Chuck, we got to start first with some news that got reported last week by The Guardian that kind of blew my mind. It kind of came out of nowhere from me, but they reported last week that Concacaf and UEFA are discussing the possibility of a joint Nations League between the two confederations. What's your take on this? Do you think it's realistic? And how would it impact the U.S. men's national team program?
So I think this is kind of more of a discussion for the sake of discussion right now, because after the attempt to sell private equity investment in FIFA, this is more of a Concacaf and UEFA saying, hey, FIFA, you don't hold all the power. If we want to do our own personal tournament, we can. And if Gianni Infantino doesn't decide to not run for presidency, then that's when we probably talk into larger chances of something like this, or more realistic, some form of a breakaway World Cup happening. But as of right now, I wouldn't read very much into this.
So you think it's mostly a political play?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe so. I still got excited. I'm going to be completely honest with you, because, we're not talking about a whole, I don't know if it's not necessarily a World Cup replacement. It's CONCACAF already has a Nations League. UEFA already has a Nations League. They play in the same windows. The talk would be that it would follow a similar format where you'd have a group phase, you'd have a Final Four knockout phase. League A would be top European teams plus top CONCACAF teams. And they're saying it could launch, and to your point, it's very early in the discussions. They said only a few weeks ago they've started it, and it was kind of triggered, by the timing of this whole Gianni Infantino thing. But it could kick off as early as 2028, after the European Championships. I mean, even though it's a long shot, go ahead.
I would say, but then there's also the potential of Asia joining in as well, because they put out a statement that we're like, we'd be interested in this, but they don't currently have a Nations League. There's a lot going on here. And also, I don't view Nations League, really either of them, as a worthwhile competition to have, because it was nice when it was just yes, the Gold Cup isn't the most prestigious tournament, but you have the World Cup, you have your continental tournament, and then you just play semi-meaningless games in between / World Cup qualifiers. And we still have to think about the fact that there is too much soccer in the calendar, and that this would probably require players to play games in the United States and Europe during international breaks. That's just nuts.
Yeah. I mean, the travel, I don't think, you think about this League A, which I think they have in the European Nations League, I think it's 16 teams in League A. So maybe, something natural would be 12 European teams and then the top 4 CONCACAF teams potentially. For the US, for Canada, for Mexico, the travel doesn't appear to be that terrible for me, especially when you consider so many players are playing in Europe. But European teams flying to North America, and then the League B and League C teams flying down to the Caribbean, in Central America, I sense there's not going to be a huge appetite, for that.
No.
That's why I'm surprised that you're. I am surprised. I'm so surprised that they would even entertain this. So maybe you're right. It's just so far fetched. But I was just shocked that it's even a possibility, and it got me super excited about it because what do we talk about all the time? That we don't play enough meaningful games. Even with our Nations League, we can never get a friendly with Europe because they're so busy. And like this would solve that.
Yeah, but you also solve that. You also solve that in a much easier way by just participating in Copa America more.
Oh, I mean, 100%. But we're talking about. I mean, hopefully we get into Copa America in 2028, and I hope it becomes just a regular thing that we could get in there, and then it's just a perfect break in between World Cup, cycles every 2 years, or every 2 years you'd be playing a Copa America or World Cup. But then if you layered this on top of it, I mean, imagine if the U.S. was playing in a combined Nations League and a Copa America before the 2030 World Cup. How much better the preparation would be than what it was last cycle.
I mean, I don't know if it changes much because like the lead up to the World Cup, the issue wasn't who they played. Like the US was able to schedule top teams from everywhere. And there has been, it seems like, a bigger effort to schedule the toughest games that they can under Pochettino. And like, sure, some of those don't always include European nations, but like when you look at some of the schedules that they're playing too, outside of like maybe England playing like a Spain or Portugal once, if they're not in a tournament, they're not playing that tough of schedules either when they go through qualifying and different things of the sort.
Yeah, but those are friendlies, Chuck. These would be competitive fixtures. You'd be playing in competitive fixtures.
Nations League is not a competitive tournament. Until you get to the semifinals and the finals, like it's not taken seriously. And I don't think that just like setting up something where you're scheduling matches against European nations means that it's like immediately going to become this super prestigious tournament.
You think it's not taken seriously in Concacaf and UEFA?
And when you're in like the group stages and whatnot, absolutely. That's why the US basically doesn't play in the group stage.
I'm talking about UEFA though.
Yeah, I just mean the UEFA group stage also isn't taken seriously. Like you'll see like a France or an England just not playing their top players for the group stage because they don't need them playing those games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I don't have a feel for. I've never really watched the UEFA Nations League other than maybe the finals. And so I don't know how seriously they take it. I'm sure it's World Cup number 1, Euros number 2, UEFA would be their like third tier competition.
Yeah, and it's a slightly bigger deal for smaller nations in UEFA because you look at a situation like Sweden where the only reason that they got into the World Cup because they lost basically every game in qualifying was because of UEFA Nations League, but also like that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like the U.S. would take it very seriously, a lot more seriously than they take CONCACAF Nations League. But I don't know. So I'm getting the feeling from you, Chuck, that you don't think it's really realistic that it's going to happen, but you also don't want it to happen.
Correct.
Wow. I'm shocked by that.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with playing more games against UEFA teams, but like I just don't think that we need to mandate that like every 2 years we're doing this competition that doesn't make any sense for anyone.
Yeah. I guess I feel like if you're going to do it anyways, if UEFA is going to have their Nations League, we're going to have our Nations League, a combined Nations League for the U.S. would be a lot better.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I would also just do away with all Nations Leagues.
Okay. I like them. I gotta tell you, I like them because it's competitive fixtures that mean something if you win or lose. And I know the U.S. doesn't participate until the quarterfinals typically, but it still means they're typically going on the road for at least one of the ties. to a place that's uncomfortable to play. And then they're playing in games that I think the fans, especially if you're playing Mexico in like a final, that's a lot bigger deal than playing Mexico in like a friendly in that window or some other team in that window. And so I like them. I know it's not a perfect system, but I like that there's more competitive like matches. And I think it's good for CONCACAF as a whole. It gives smaller nations like more competitive fixtures and meaningful games as well. And so I don't know. I'm cheering for it. I would love to see it happen. Realize it's a long shot, but I think I'm a little bit more excited about it than I'm hearing you are. Chuck is not a fan of Nations League, folks.
Nope.
All right. Well, we will see what happens. Very early stages could all be a moot point. But I've always seen CONMEBOL as the more likely partner for CONCACAF in any kind of combination scenario. We're already doing it, with the Copa America, lately. This one really took me by surprise. Let's stay with the European theme and let's talk about what happened last weekend. Okay, so on last week's show, I asked Chuck, I said, hey, who were you impressed with? The guy wasn't impressed really by anybody. How about this weekend, Chuck? Did somebody stand out to you in Europe?
So this week, it's an interesting mix because, I guess basically like Ricardo Pepi and Serginho Dest heard the episode, because now Dest, instead of getting an assist, went and scored, which is always significant when a defender scores, and I was more impressed with just the number of captains that the USMNT had abroad. Like especially seeing Marseille's lineup, I was actually shocked that Tim Weah is captaining the full strength squad into the season. So for someone who you need a bounce back from after that World Cup, like his club giving him that level of responsibility was really good to see.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever done that, or at least I couldn't remember him being a captain before for any of his teams. So that caught me by surprise. To your point, Tim Weah was captain, Gianluca Busio was captain of his team, and then I believe Cole Campbell was captain as well. George Campbell. Sorry,
the other one.
George Campbell from West Brom is captaining his team as well. So, I watched that Marseille-Strasbourg game. After telling you that I'm just kind of not into Gio Reyna anymore, there I was on last Friday buying a subscription to BN Sports. So I got it, $6,599 a month. I just had to watch that game. And aside from Weah being the captain, it was a pretty boring game, for me. He seemed to be pretty quiet. I think, what did it end up being, like 4-0?
Because
like
also,
that.
Strasbourg got a red card,
right,
and then it was just all over from there.
Yeah, but it was cool he was captain. I thought he had a pretty quiet game most of the game. Gio Reyna did get in. He came on in the 69th minute. I don't know. I didn't notice anything extraordinary from him, but
at this point, just playing soccer is something. So
yeah. I agree. 69th minute, it wasn't garbage time. They clearly got him in there with some time to play. And so maybe that's a positive sign that he's going to get more minutes or maybe even a start in the future. The guy that stood out to me was Yunus Musah. He was another guy we talked about last week, how he was starting in the preseason. We kind of doubted that was going to mean anything. And I know Milan is still... a lot of their who we think are going to be their starters, like Pulisic, for example, is coming back from injury. Some others just hadn't been with the team long enough since the World Cup. So it's not like they necessarily have their best 11, but they started Yunus Musah. He goes the full 90, and I thought he looked pretty good. I watched that game yesterday, and I was pretty impressed with Yunus Musah. What'd you think?
Yeah, it's definitely the most that you can ask for right now. I don't think that he necessarily did anything extremely well, but he also didn't do anything badly. And yeah, played the full 90 with the squad that Milan had. Although, I mean, who knows what the squad is going to look like? 'Cause, I mean, there's the rumors of Rafael Leal leaving. Christian Pulisic didn't play in that game because he's still recovering from the microfracture that he got in during the World Cup. Like I believe like last Friday was actually his first time even this preseason even training with the club.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it, thinking of Musah, a lot of it was that he didn't make the mistakes that we've been seeing him make the last couple of years. I mean, the guy had so many giveaways, and he would lose the ball so many times when he would dribble the last couple of years. And he was just solid yesterday. I remember when he was a younger player, I used to listen to Hercules Gomez talk about Yunus Musah, and he always said that he thought the biggest strength of Yunus Musah was his ability under pressure to dribble out of trouble, get a burst up the field, and just drive the ball forward. You know, he could come out of a press, make a move with the dribble, and next thing you know, he was going 10, 20 yards upfield and relieving pressure, and you would see him do that over and over again. I hadn't seen him doing that the last couple of years, and I think it's a confidence thing because he would just always lose the ball over and over again.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I saw him doing that. The first goal that they scored came about from him doing that exact thing at the beginning of the sequence of play.
Yeah, and you definitely do need to be able to play to get a feel for those spots. And especially since like the biggest thing that he kind of has to grow in as a player is after he makes those bursts, then doing the right thing when he gets in the final third, because a lot of times it's Yunus Musah will get the ball up the field, but then doesn't really do anything once he gets there.
Yeah. Yeah, he got the initial burst, he was getting it up the field, and then he would lay it off to the right teammate. And yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I wasn't expecting him to start or go the full 90. I think it's he looks like he could contribute there. And to your point, Pulisic did not play. He was on the bench. He did dress. I saw him in some of the goal celebrations out on the field. He was warming up, but never did go in. But I think a good sign for him that he at least was fit enough to dress and be on the bench. Who disappointed you, or who stood out from a negative point of view in your mind over Europe last weekend?
So Middlesbrough's coaching staff.
Oh, tell me more.
Because we had all the Americans start for Middlesbrough. Aidan Morris made his return, but Sebastian Berhalter was on the wing. Aidan Morris was playing as a more advanced midfielder, and none of it worked as they lost to Blackburn. And it's strange because Aidan Morris is more of a traditional six that can progress more than your average six, but isn't necessarily someone you want taking the ball up the field. Whereas Berhalter is kind of an eight that can be a six because he can be a box-to-box midfielder and like has above average passing for a box-to-box midfielder, but he doesn't have the burst that you would want from a winger. And so the whole lineup was just strange, and I don't know if it was just like, okay, how do we actually get everyone on the field at once? But hopefully in their next game, there's some changes in how that lineup looks.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. They seemed to dominate the first half. They dominated possession. They dominated the same chances. And then they were up, I think, 1-0. And then I had to like leave the match for like 10 or 15 minutes after halftime. And I come back and they're losing 2-1.
Oh, yeah.
And the game never looked the same after that.
Yeah, it was very, very quick that everything fell apart there.
Yeah, yeah. Was good to see all three of them on the field at the same time. But yeah, hopefully it goes better when all three of them are on the same field in their next match. You know, what stood out to me from last weekend in terms of like disappointing performances, or maybe, I don't know, surprising performances, was Tyler Adams starting for Bournemouth on the bench. and he came on in the 75th minute. But I'm used to him just being a regular week in, week out starter. I know they have a new coach this year, so maybe a new coach sees it differently. I mean, what'd you make of him starting on the bench? Is that any cause for concern?
Yeah, this is similar with the Alex Freeman situation where I just want to see more time, especially since it's another club that's going to be in Europe this season. They're going to have more games. And his preseason started still later than everyone else's because of getting a break after the World Cup. So like if he's still not starting games 3 weeks from now, I might be concerned, but the fact that he still came on, even though unfortunately after he came on, that game against City did kind of fall apart. But that's just the unfortunate nature of playing City, where at any point, even if you're leading, you might not be by the end. But yeah, I'm not even even though I am down on Bournemouth overall this season, just with the coaching shift, I don't know if that means that Tyler Adams is going to play less.
Yeah. Yeah, something to watch. Good point about him coming into camp late. It's just new coach, new system. You never know how he's going to rate different players. It's just something to watch. A few other things I'll mention before we leave Europe. Xavier Gozo's move to Crystal Palace became official. He did not suit up with the Crystal Palace first team, but he did suit up in their U21 squad match and scored a goal. So that's a positive start for him. We'll see if he makes it into the team for their match next week. Speaking of Alex Freeman, neither him or Cardoso played in Atletico Madrid versus Villarreal's 2-2 draw over the weekend. Both of them started on the bench, did not play. And then one other thing I want to talk about is the fact that Man United lost 2-0 to recently promoted Hull City. Your Tottenham lost 3-0 to Brentford. And why do I bring these up? Because to me, these are two clubs that if they get off to bad starts and they fire their manager, Mauricio Pochettino is going to be a prime candidate to replace one of those. Last season, the first Premier League manager got sacked in September. Two more got sacked in November. And so it can happen quickly. I'm not suggesting it. This is just 1 week. But those are two clubs I'm kind of keeping an eye on. If they get off to really slow starts, could they sack their manager early and then would Pochettino be one of their top candidates? What's your feeling on that? How safe is Tottenham manager's job?
Tottenham's pretty safe, honestly, because I mean they've made a pretty long-term commitment to De Zerbi. He didn't have about half of his signings actually available for that first game, and then like Pedro Porro and Mickey van de Ven also weren't available. And now it seems like they're going out and adding Omar Marmoush and Savinho to the squad. So you'll at least get a situation where he'll get to see what he can do with everyone there, especially after kind of saving the club from relegation last season. And similarly with United, they're in a bit of a weirder situation just because expectations are higher being in Champions League. But I don't see Carrick necessarily being gone like in September, but we could have some interesting discussions to have there around Christmas if their set play defense does not improve.
Yeah. Yeah, just something to watch because you know there'll be a couple of sackings before December 31st, before the end of the year in the Premier League. I mean, that's typically the case. We'll see who it is, and just I'm more interested than normal because of Pochettino. All right, let's go to MLS. Every week we've been talking about the Sullivans, it seems like, when we go to MLS, or at least Cavan. Is he your standout performer of the past week as well, or did somebody else catch your eye?
Yeah, even though he scored, I don't honestly think he was even the best teenage performer on the Union, because that was just Neil Pierre being involved in everything to make sure that Austin were held to only one goal in that game. And it was an interesting look at, like, maybe it, and it's a weird scenario, but like maybe a bit of overconfidence in Cavan's game. Because he did have quite a few dispossessions, even though he did score in the match. And like, I mean, those things are going to happen, especially since everyone on the field is bigger than him. But you would like to see, especially as he's playing more minutes, limiting those.
Yeah. So Neil Pierre, this is a 18-year-old center back. I mean, how far away do you think he is from being considered for the U.S. men's national team? I see he's played up through the U19s.
Yeah. Considering the center back core for the U.S. men's national team, he's not very far. And It's funny because he in some ways did a bit of a reverse Diego Cochin, because he spent the first half of this season on loan at Lyngby as they were pushing for promotion to the top flight in the Danish league, because the Union have a minority stake in Lyngby. And then that kind of gave him the confidence coming back, where now he just thinks that he can stop any attacker in front of him. And I mean, like, after going up against Messi and still leaving with a point, no one can necessarily tell him otherwise either. And he's already, I think, scored 3 goals this season as well, because he's just a massive target on corners and free kicks, and knows where he needs to be. And the Union have plenty of players that can get the ball to him.
Yeah. Okay, so you got him. You got Cavan Sullivan. We got Quinn Sullivan. There's also this Milan. Is it Iloski? Iloski, yeah. Iloski, okay. So this is a guy who's not a young player. He's 27, but he's now at 10 goals, 5 assists in MLS. Looking into him, seems like he's been a little bit of a journeyman in his career in both Europe and MLS. So I named 4 players right there that have maybe USMNT ties. I mean, do you think Iloski has any chance of making it into the U.S. men's national team? And then just how many Union players, if you had to guess, you think have a realistic chance of making it into the fall window for the U.S.?
For the fall window, I think there's probably 2. But like in 2030, I think it's 4.
Okay. Who are the 2 you think could make it in?
For the fall window, I think it's most like I think Cavan Sullivan has to be in, as we've discussed on this. And then I also think that if you're going in that route, that it makes too much sense, especially considering the center back depth, to also bring Neil Pierre in too.
Okay.
I mean, there's definitely a chance, especially since he went to the World Cup as extra hands, that Andrew Rick might be there as well. But like, his situation's a little weirder because he's not a starter for the Union right now, since Andre Blake is still there. But he's one of the guys, along with Frankie Westfield, that I would see in the bigger picture for 2030.
Okay. Iloski, any chance at all for him, you think? Is
Probably
he like a
not.
Brian White?
I would say, because of the way that they play, Brian White's definitely ahead of him, because Iloski is at his best in a 2-striker formation, and that's not really something that the U.S. plays with often. Like, they have rolled it out a couple of times, but it seems like option A is always a lone striker, which is something that Brian White can do better than Iloski can.
Okay. Well, we can't leave talking about the Union without talking about this body slam, wrestling move, whatever you want to call it, that Quinn Sullivan did to Ian Frey last week when they played Inter Miami. Super entertaining match, 2-2 draw. I'm sure everybody's seen it, but if you haven't, you got to go check out Quinn Sullivan's move. I mean, it was just, to me, just body slam, hardcore body slam. There's a scuffle afterwards. Cavan got sent off with a red that was later rescinded. So he was able to play, in their following match. But I mean, to me, Quinn Sullivan goes down in like USMNT folklore because of that move. Like, I will always think of, when I see Quinn Sullivan, I think I'm always going to think of that moment. What'd you make of all that?
I mean, it's one of those things that's annoying that it had to happen, but you do want to see players sticking up for each other when moments like that happen. And even talking about it after, right, like Ryan Richter was just kind of immediately like, I mean, yeah, what do you expect to happen? Like, it's only natural that you're going to have a reaction like that, considering everything that went down.
Yeah. It was a very physical game. Ian Frey kind of like tried to step over Quinn Sullivan. He did not like it, and hence the wrestling move. But then, as much as I enjoyed that, what was even more entertaining the next morning is when I got on social media and I saw the clip. Someone found a clip of Quinn Sullivan basically going forehead to forehead with Messi, which I assume was after that or just before that. But
It was just before.
Just before.
Because Messi also got fined for kind of slapping him during all that.
Yeah. So Messi said something to him. Obviously didn't like how Quinn responded, kind of slapped him, which later led to the fine. But then Quinn just goes right up to him, gets his forehead. I mean, talk about a great picture for your kids. I mean, he's got this picture of him like going forehead to forehead with Lionel Messi for the rest of his life. I mean, that was beautiful. Anyway, I really liked that. I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Quinn doesn't really get into scuffles that often, does he? He seems more a clean-cut guy.
That's what's wild, is like, because I mean, that's not something that happens involving the union anymore. Like when Jose Martinez was a member of the team, then things like that happened more because of the way he played. But like, yeah, this is usually a relatively collected team, and so that was certainly an outlier.
Yeah, I was surprised. Okay, let's go to summer transfers, where we got about 1 week left, a little bit over a week left before the transfer window closes on September 1st. Balogun, we've kind of gone back and forth on, is he going to make a move or not? A couple weeks ago, I was starting to doubt it, but now it seems like these rumors are heating up. Supposedly, Barcelona and Aston Villa are also interested, along with Tottenham. Balogun did not dress in Monaco's season opener over the weekend. What's your thought on these latest two teams to kind of come into the conversation about Flo Balogun?
Barcelona just feels weird. I don't see that like really happening. It really feels like that's just something that has been thrown in the rumor mill. But these Aston Villa links, especially since it seems like Ollie Watkins might be off to Saudi Arabia, that's a little more interesting, and something that could have legs as we go through this next week in the window. That's just another strange one, because considering Villa's squad and them being in Champions League, like, I think they've taken a huge step back from last season, especially with selling Morgan Rogers to Chelsea. And if they lose Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins, that's just going to be a lot on Balogun's shoulders, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it's a very weird situation to come into if that grows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Barcelona thing, it's hard to imagine that, but it would be exciting. I mean, I know we have Diego Coach in there, but as far as field players, you got to go all the way back to Serginho Dest, right? When he was playing for them and he would play regularly, like with Messi. But to have an American playing for Barcelona, week in, week out would be, I think, pretty exciting for fans. And I guess you never know what could happen, but it seems like a really big step for Balogun, where maybe I'd like to see him make another intermediate step, towards that, as the next step. It feels like there's a huge, the risk reward feels very great on that type of move.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with that.
Okay. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of other people I'm keeping a super close eye on regarding like Americans in the transfer window. I mean, am I missing anybody? Is there anybody that you think is likely to move in this final week?
Not really. I mean, this window's been just strangely quiet, and I'm sure that at some point it is going to have something happen. But yeah, it feels like most teams felt like they wanted to get their business done early, and then there's just not much of anything going on right now.
Yeah, I know. Maybe there'll be some just last minute deals, but it does seem like Balogun is just the main one to watch right now. I mean, do you see it as like greater than 50% chance that he moves at this point?
Because of the not being involved in the squad at all, I would probably put it around 50%, but I wouldn't necessarily put it higher than that yet.
Yeah. That's the thing that really caught my eye, to not play him at all. I can't think of any other reason for that, and unless you're thinking that he's going to move.
Yeah, because he hasn't, at least as far as anyone's aware, he hasn't picked up any injuries or anything.
No, I couldn't find anything on that. Okay, so that's something we'll be watching in the next week, is this transfer window. What else are you going to be watching for in the next week involving Americans over at their clubs?
Well, probably the biggest thing is just the Bundesliga kicking off, and the fact that there is an American that many may have forgotten about that's now moved to a newly promoted club, and also plays a position where, in theory, there is going to be space for the U.S. men's national team, and Cole Campbell. Because after getting his move to Dortmund, that didn't really work. And then he spent the end of last season on loan at Hoffenheim, but with them pushing for Europe themselves, still couldn't really push into the lineup. But now he's made a move to newly promoted Elversberg, where you assume he's going to be one of their starters and probably one of their best chances of staying up in the league, especially after making his full debut for the club in the DFB Pokal, where he went a full 90, completed 5 dribbles, created a couple of chances, and took 3 shots.
Yeah. Yeah, I did kind of forget about him, to be honest with you. We talk about we've been talking about all these young players recently, and here's a young player. How old is he? Like
20.
20, okay. So here's a young player now that's starting for a Bundesliga club in an attacking position, and yeah, he's someone to keep an eye on. I was telling you before we kicked off the recording that I found myself not too excited about watching the Bundesliga this season, but he is one I'll need to keep an eye on. And then of course Malik Tillman for Leverkusen, didn't have the greatest first season with them. Can he become, one of their most dependent on players, this season and kind of turn things around?
Yeah, and I think we're still all waiting to see, like, if Noah Banks actually ends up representing the U.S. men's national team, because that's something that people will very quickly get excited to see if he does, but you just literally have no idea right now.
Right, exactly. And then there's good old dependable Joe Scally, still at Gladbach. I had read that he might get a move this summer, but I haven't heard, other than hearing that as a rumor, I haven't heard one potential club. So he's still there, kicking along, not getting everyone's respect for starting week in and week out in the Bundesliga. Got to give a shout out to him as well. I'm excited about this Red Bull New York versus Philadelphia match, on Saturday. I know we've been very Philadelphia Union heavy on this show the last couple weeks, but it's just there's so much happening with them, and now they're playing Red Bulls, which is the other team that has all of these young Americans. So we're going to have Cavan, Sullivan, we're going to have Adrian Mehmeti, Julian Hall. Who else? I'm sure I'm missing some other folks. Westfield, like you mentioned earlier. All these young American players are going to be on the field at the same time playing against each other, and I think that's just going to be an awesome spectacle to watch.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be tuning in for that. And actually, ahead of that game, I'm going to be talking to the Red Bulls Academy director too for putting something together, because at this time, those are the players that people want to see.
Yeah, people are getting excited about these players. I'm just sensing that on social media. I'm sensing that in the media, that people are really excited about this new crop of players, post World Cup and what they can do. And I think if you haven't had a chance to see many of them play lately, check out that game on Saturday, because you'll be able to see a lot of them, right there in one shot. All right, Chuck, let's call it a show. Thanks to everyone for joining Here and Abroad this week. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever else you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on socials at Here and Abroad Pod. You can follow me on Blue Sky or X at Frank Garza 007. You can follow Chuck on Blue Sky at Chuck Yeah. Thanks again for joining, Chuck, and we'll see everyone next week.